What's up, guys? Have you been taught how to think or just what to think? Recently, Daniel Dennett, or I saw a lecture recently by Daniel Dennett, a part of a lecture, where he was mentioning that there was some fraudulent activity going on in the intelligent design movement, that they're basically misusing and misrepresenting things. And here's the quote. If you understand Orgel's second rule correctly, you understand what is fraudulent. I use the word advisedly. What is fraudulent about the intelligent design movement? Now, that is crafty, just calling it a movement, trying to relate it to religion, relate it just to religion. And religions, kind of come and go because movements come and go. And the term movement seems, kind of fickle. And so I give him credit and props on crafting that, but how ridiculous. But anyway, he says, I'm gonna show you basically what is fraudulent about the intelligent design movement because there's an equivocation on the word design. So every time an atheist professor is up lecturing about evolution or explaining how we don't need God, etc., and he uses the word design, a God believer will step up and go, hey, you just used the word design. So what you really are pointing at is that subconsciously you believe that God exists. And so Dawkins and Dennett and such as these basically will step forward and go, no, listen. I use the word design, not like you're using the word design. Things look designed, but they're not really designed. And so I don't want you to cross the wires there. So don't use my words against me. And he basically then is accusing the fraudulent activity of the intelligent design community that anytime the word design pops up, you are fraudulently misusing it. Okay? Or you're fraudulently ascribing us as misusing it. Check this very next quote out. The products of evolution are brilliantly designed. The process of design that produces those products is not itself brilliant or foresighted or intelligent at all. It is purposeless and mechanical without any foresight. However, it is amazingly well suited to produce brilliant designs, and these designs have rationales. Now, the term brilliant does not mean beautiful. And what I mean here is that we're not talking about the appearance of something. So if I saw something that was beautiful over there that was created by a human being, like I said, that's beautiful. And then maybe there's something naturally occurring, supposedly either God created or not God created, depending on your belief stance. But there's something over here that's in nature that's beautiful. And I could say, well, that's beautiful too, and I could mean the same thing without referencing what is behind it. But when you get into using the term brilliant, you're automatically and immediately jumping into intelligence again. You're not just talking about appearance at this point, you're actually talking about the functionality of it. That's what we use the term brilliant for. So in every other corner of life, when we use the term brilliant, we are talking about piercing insight. We're talking about someone that really focused on something, or they had a moment of enlightenment where they advanced beyond normal and they came up with something that was brilliant. And we're always talking about things in that fashion. And so then if Daniel Dennett is pointing at Christians and going, hey, you're using design in the wrong way, then it's very easy to point back and go, hey, you're using the term brilliant in the wrong way and you're grandiosely misusing it in a terrible fashion. So Daniel Dennett states, the products of evolution are brilliantly designed. The process of design that produces those products is not itself brilliant. That's interesting. It would be like saying that is beautiful, but the process that produced it is not beautiful. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're not now talking about something appears. We're talking about function. That's the word brilliant is used for, is for the actual function. That's why we say brilliant. It's not the thing itself was brilliant. It's that the design behind it was brilliant. The idea, the intelligence behind it. And he's still using it. So the process of design that produces those products is not itself brilliant or foresighted or intelligent. It is purposeless and mechanical and without any foresight. However, it is amazingly well suited to produce brilliant designs, and these designs have rationales, So he ends all this by trying to say, you creationists, you're misusing things. You God believers, you are misusing the terminology. Let me show you how to use the terminology. And then he uses it in a terrible fashion. But his whole point is, let's get into the mechanism of the universe. Let's just look at the actual process that made all these things that appear to be but are not really brilliant. It's just, they don't have any kind of intelligence to them. It's just mechanistic, and it doesn't have any kind of foresight at all. Well, that got me to thinking, and this is back to the reference to my immediate first question, which was, have you been taught what to think or how to think? So here, Daniel Dennett is making a very strong statement. He's like, these things appear to be designed, they appear to be brilliant, but they're really not. If you look at the process behind it, then that process is not with foresight. It doesn't have any intelligence. It's not brilliant. And so they got me to thinking, like, I want to think about this. I want to focus on the how to think about this, not just the what to think, because that's what Daniel is doing here. He's telling you what to think. He said the process behind it is not brilliant. And so I was like, okay, let's look at the process. I'm going to try to look at this from an atheistic standpoint, and I'm just going to look at the process, the mechanism of the universe. And so if I'm being scientific about it, what do I really observe? And what I observe, if I'm honest, when I just look around at things are pretty constant, or they appear to be very constant and stable. And what I mean by that is very little movement. Now, you bear with me for a second, but let's take human beings and animals and plants out of the equation for a second, because supposedly the mechanism of the universe created those things, okay? So those things move, but let's get rid of those concepts for a second. And let's back off of like just wind and water for just a hair of a second, and the sun's angles alignment with the earth that creates shadows and warmth and coldness. And if I just look around at the stability and the constancy of the universe, do I see a mechanism there that is just producing and processing and building things that look brilliant? Or do I just see a lot of zero-sum movement? I don't see much movement at all. I don't see things really being produced. I do see a little bit of, repetition, but again, a lot of that's with the sun and with the wind and with the water cycle, which is caught up with the sun and the wind and the water. And so what do I really see going on? I see mostly zero movement, mostly. And if I dig into that, what I do see is things like erosion. Now, I don't know about you, but if you've ever had a plot of land where you're trying to control erosion and nature is having its due course, there's not much you can do about it. The ditch in my front yard has a section that's weak, and it's just eroding, and it's just continually washing down the street, and I have no control over it. I can fight it, but the erosion process isn't doing something brilliant. It's doing something repetitive and cyclical and mechanical, but it's not really producing anything. It's actually eroding things. And then I also see decay. Like of the living things that I do see, I see a lot of decay going on. Everything gets old at a certain stage and begins to die off. And then if I'm really honest, when I look around this really mechanistic universe that's not moving a whole lot, then for anything that is living, I see struggle, intense struggle. I don't see brilliant survival or a brilliant package that is helping all this to happen. Now, I'm not demeaning God's creation here, guys, anybody that is a Christian. But I'm saying, like, if I look through the hard lens of a mechanistic universe, then I would just see struggle. Of course, I don't see it that way. And then I also see that if I look at the mathematical probabilities of things and how things aren't just popping up and how things aren't just being produced and how the likelihood of two things lining up in a brilliant fashion from a mechanistic scenario, and then I have to multiply that to the third degree and the fourth degree and the fifth degree and the millionth degree and the 10 millionth degree. I never observe these type of things. Now, it's not just about observation either, because when we get into the micro observation of things, there's something else we discover. Like, even though everything around me appears to be stable, it's not. It's not. And that really gets me to wondering. So, like, if we get down into the quantum level, if we start looking at the atoms and molecules around us, everything is in movement and in flux. And they're in different levels of excitement and movement. And so then you would wonder, if you've got this mechanistic universe that is all abuzz, that everything about it is actually in motion, how did it end up creating life and consciousness and perspective, that everything about you is just utterly calm? That there is motion in the universe, but a subtle amount of motion, or that's the appearance of it. Why is it that all the solid things that are about me right now in this room appear to be stable, even though they're, not? They are stable as chemicals and as substances, but they are moving. I just don't perceive them as such. And it has me thinking other things like, all the gas that's in our atmosphere just happens to be clear. And so when I think about all those things, I'm like, well, that's kind of brilliant. It does look like all of this has to be designed, because there's too many opposites if I begin to look at things logically. Things that are not moving, from the macro level, if things are not moving, they don't produce, they don't make processes, they don't do much. If things are decaying, then they're not creating. If things are struggling, they're not really surviving. And if things are probably in the opposite direction, if all the probabilities are against it, how does somebody step forward and just blatantly tell me that a mechanism that is not brilliant has created brilliant things? And how can they even do that morally? Like, how can someone say that morally? I'm talking about within their own self. So it seems to me that when you use the word design or brilliant, you are talking about intelligence, because you have to. Now, you can deny it, but the effects are so clear that there is no denying that God did, in fact, design this universe.